Today we're going to move on to another section. This section is 11.1. It is called circumference and arc length. So we are going to be looking at the relationship between the circumference of a circle and a portion of the circumference. So I would like you to write down these two definitions here. So you might want to pause the video. Number one, the circumference you should know is the distance around a circle. And then arc length is a portion of the circumference of a circle. So why don't you pause, write those two down and come back. I want to talk about arc length here just a little bit longer. Okay, let me just talk about arc length for just a second. So if we take a circle, let's see, I'm going to have 2 points here. Let's just call them A and B. And so I have two ways to describe this arc. So let's just say this is the diameter. So I already know that the measure of the arc is 180 degrees. Okay, that's a section of the 360. But the length of the arc is not a degree measure, it's an amount. So we're going to talk about, like, maybe what is this? Is it 100 inches? Is it 10 inches? Like, what is the length of this arc? And it's going to have a relationship with the degree measure of the arc. So let's just focus on basic circumference first, and then we'll get into that. Okay, reminder on circumference of a circle. Circumference of a circle is either the formula pi times diameter, pi times d, or 2 pi r. And really they're the same formula because radius is equal to, let me back up, diameter is equal to double the radius. So if we take 2r and plug it in place of d, we get the second formula, the 2 pi r. Okay, so let's move on to a few examples here. Find the indicated measure. So the circumference of the circle is, we want to find the circumference of the circle if we know the radius is 11. So I'm going to start here. Pi equals, now you can use either formula. I'm just going to use the 2 pi r most of the time. So 11 is the radius. So I'm going to be doing 2 times pi times 11. Now I'm going to write two answers here. If I were to just combine the 2 and the 11, that would be 22 pi. Now, this is a lot of times what we consider exact. So let me come back to that. Let's go ahead and actually multiply in pi. So you do have a pi key on your calculator. 22 times, you could do the pi key. You could do 3.14. I don't say how to round. Let's just round to the nearest tenth. So this is going to be, I'm actually going to change my symbol here. I'm going to use the approximation symbol because I have rounded this. So if we go to the nearest tenth, it's 69.1. Now, this is in terms of feet, and I'm going to attach a label here. Okay, so this one is considered approximate, and then this one we call exact. Okay, and that's because we haven't rounded it. Pi is an irrational number. It never it doesn't stop, it doesn't repeat. So if I want the exact answer, 22 pi is what I would write. If it tells me to round to the nearest tenth or something like that, I would use the decimal. Okay, go ahead and do letter B. Will you do both exact and approximate? And then come back to the video when you are finished. Okay, so I am substituting in 75 for C. Now, I'm going to do it two different ways. You could work with, if you want to switch between the formulas, you can, because I see the word diameter here. So if I worked with the first formula, it would look like this. So let's say I continue with 2 pi r. I'm going to solve for radius. So I'm going to come through here. I want to divide by 2 and I want to divide by pi. I can do this in one step. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. Pi divided by pi is also 1. So I am left here with r. Now, when I do this right-hand side, I have to make sure that I do 75 divided by both of those. So if I do this on my calculator, I will do 75 divided by, and then I'm going to open up my parentheses, and then I'm going to do 2 times pi, and then close my parentheses. And so that's going to give me approximately 11.9. Okay? Now, if that is my radius, I need to multiply by 2 to get diameter. So I'm probably not going to round on my calculator and just turn right around and hit times 2. So I'm going to say that the diameter is approximately 23.9, 23.87. It kind of depends on how you rounded it. Now, if I come back to the right-hand side, notice all I have to do here is I need to solve for d. So if I just divide off pi like this, because pi divided by pi is 1, I can just do 75 divided by pi, and I still get that same number, that 23.9 answer, okay? So you just have to decide, do you want to switch between the formulas? Do you just want to work with one formula? It just kind of depends. Okay, so those are 2 different types, whether you just plug in radius or you have to solve for c. I'd like you to try 1, 2, and 3. You are finding this first part, so circumference on number 1, radius, and then back to circumference. And go ahead and do an approximation with multiply pi in. Do not leave it in exact form. Okay. So I'm going to work with a radius of 8. You don't have to work with this formula. So whatever 16 pi is, so circumference is approximately 50.3 inches. Okay. Number 2, so I have c equals 2 pi r. I know the c. I want to solve for radius. I'm going to do them both at once. And so make sure I have my parentheses. 35 divided by parentheses 2 pi parentheses. So radius is about we'll call it 5.6, rounded to the nearest 10th yards. And then one more. So circumference. So I need the circumference. C equals 2 times pi, and I am just given radius. So I would be doing 9 pi, and so that would be approximately 28.3 if I go to the nearest 10th. I think I have you going to the nearest 10th on homework, so that's kind of why I'm going to the nearest 10th here. Okay, so these first few examples are just going over basic circumference and calculating circumference, and then working backwards to get either radius or diameter. Okay, I'm actually going to do a second video over the next part because I don't want this to become too long. So please move on to